Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's Data Protection Forum. As you know, or hopefully you know, we run these sessions every fortnight on a Wednesday at 9 a.m. And people can come along live. And the plus of coming on live is that you um, get to ask me questions. And if you're not here live, obviously it's not so easy to ask me questions, although you can always send me an email or a message on LinkedIn, but preferably come along. Um, and I'm going to do something to try and encourage people to come along. So for the session in 2 weeks' time, if you come along and you stay for the whole live session, I will mail you out completely free of charge a copy of my book, GDPR Made Simple. So there's real incentive there for you to come along in 2 weeks' time and join us live. I will actually, I've got to be a bit careful there because obviously could have 100 people join. So I'm going to say for the first 25 people who come along and stay for the whole meeting, I will mail you out a copy of my book. So anyway, on to today's session. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about data mapping from discovery to storage and why it's important. Because we're going to talk through data mapping, what it is, why it matters, how you can implement it effectively. It's really not as difficult as sometimes people think that it is. And our whole ethos, as you know, here at Insurity is about GDPR made fun. Hence why we created a little toy figure that you can see there on the screen at the moment. Just another bit of us making it fun. So what are we going to cover this morning in a bit more detail? We're going to cover why data mapping matters, what actually is data mapping, common pitfalls in data mapping, best practices for data mapping, some recommended tools that I personally used for data mapping. There are lots of tools out there, but these are ones that I've used. Most of them are either free or low price, so that even if you're a small, SME, you can still afford these tools to do the data mapping. And then a bit about how we can help so that if you don't want to do it yourself or you feel a bit overwhelmed by the sense of having to do the data mapping, then how we can help you do that. Some next steps and some practical steps you can take, and then time for any questions and answers. So, why does it matter? First thing, and perhaps the most recent thing to realize, is that data mapping is not just a compliance checkbox. It's a foundational step in understanding how data flows through your business and in mitigating your risks. And I would say that if you've not got good data mapping, it's a bit like building a house on foundations of sand. It really is not a good idea because sooner or later, your walls of your house will collapse. Um, and if you haven't got that foundation underneath, that's going to give you a real problem. So it is important that you carry out this data mapping. It's also a regulatory expectation under GDPR and also under UK GDPR and UK data protection laws. Um, it comes under a number of different names, which I think maybe is why sometimes people get confused by it. Because some people call it data mapping, some people call it your register of processing activities, some people you might hear it referred to as your Article 30 register. They're all the same thing. And although it's called data mapping, you don't necessarily need to do it in diagrams, although diagrams are often an easier way of explaining how data flows through your organization, but we'll come on to that a little bit later. I'd say good data mapping is critical for risk management, it's critical for breach prevention, and it's critical for audit readiness. If you have an audit and someone like myself comes into your business and says, let's audit what you're doing with data protection, if you've got an up-to-date Article 30 register or a ROPA register, that really is a good start. And it's a foundation for trust and transparency. And both of those, as we know, are really important. So just what is it? What is data mapping? When we say data mapping, what do we mean? It's think of data mapping as the blueprint of your data environment. It gives clarity on what data you have, how it's used, and where it's stored. And what's it all about? It's about starting with a pencil and a piece of paper. It's always best, although there are all these tools, and we're going to talk about tools a bit later, it's always best to start with a pencil and a bit of paper, because invariably that then leads to you being able to create better diagrams later. And on a simple level, it's identifying what personal data you actually hold, because how are you going to protect the data if you don't know you've got it? And so it's about identifying what personal data you hold. So do you hold data on your employees? Hopefully you do. Do you hold data on your customers? Hopefully you do. Do you hold data on your prospects? Again, hopefully you do. But what other, customers, client services, what other areas do you hold personal data? Identify all those areas first. What personal data do you hold? And that in itself, this process in itself, in anything larger than a one-person organization, although sometimes even in a one-person organization, can be a real eye-opener. Because typically, if someone like myself comes in to do this data mapping and we're talking through what you do, somebody will suddenly go, oh, what about that spreadsheet that we hold on that computer over there? Or, it's not on our main system, it's not backed up at all, but hey, we got that data over there because we use that for X, Y, Z, whatever. And it's identifying that data that's so important. Once you've identified the data, then it's about understanding how it moves through your organization. And that means knowing who accesses it, why do they access it, and what legal basis. Do you remember there are six legal bases of GDPR? What legal basis are they accessing it under? Is it consent? Is it legitimate interest? Is it legal requirement? What? Why are they accessing it? And then it's about recording where and how that data is stored or archived. And again, a common misconception here is that these days lots of people store data in the cloud. Very profound thing of saying, isn't it? Where do you store your data? I store my data in the cloud. What a lot of people don't stop and think is the cloud actually is still a physical server somewhere. And sometimes with some cloud providers, it can be incredibly difficult to hunt down where that server physically is. But you need to know, because is it in the UK? Is it in the UK? Fine. Is it in the EU? Fine. Is it somewhere else, though? Is it somewhere else in the world? I recently worked with a company, and when we did some digging into where their data flowed and where it was archived, it was actually archived onto a server in the cloud. But their cloud was actually in Ukraine, which I think most people would agree is not the safest place in the world at the moment to actually keep your data. And so, there's all these issues about working out where it is. And so all this leads on to what I always call as the 5 Ws. Whenever I'm thinking about data mapping, I'm always thinking about these 5 Ws. Who, and that's who in two senses. Who is the data about, and who is processing it? And remember that just viewing data on the screen is processing it. Even if you don't change it, it's still processing it. So who's processing the data? What are they processing? Why are they processing it? When are they processing it? And where are they processing it? And as I say, the when and where also come down to the end of the data life. When it's reached the end of its data life, when do you decide that is? And then what do you do with it? Do you destroy it? Do you pseudonymize it? Do you anonymize it? Do you leave it as it is? Each have their pluses and minuses. But the important thing is documenting it. So let's go through this in steps. Step one, identify the data that you have. Think about different types of data. Just pure personal data, special category data. An example might be, and I've been working on this in the last week with an organization, is if you are dealing with members of staff who are members of a trade union, that's actually special category data. So there are things like that to think about. And then is it financial data? Is it tax data? Is it payroll data? What sort of data is it? So identify the type, then the source. Where does it come from? Because it has to come from somewhere. It doesn't just suddenly appear. It has to come from somewhere. So where's it coming from? Is it coming from a form? Is it being extracted from emails? Is it in a database? Is it in a third-party database that maybe you access for information? And who collects that data? And how do they collect it? Is it collected on paper? Is it collected online? Is it collected in-house? How do you collect it? Once you've got that, so now we know what data we have, now we have to map it. And mapping the data flow is really in three forms. It's the internal flow between departments, the external flows to processors or third parties, and then are there any data transfers involved in it, especially are there any data transfers outside of the UK? And often when you start mapping it out like this, you actually discover where things go. I mean, a client who's been a client for a good number of years now with me, and we started mapping their payroll process, and they thought they understood how it worked. And then as we started drawing out this diagram, they realized that in fact there were whole bits that, hey, maybe Betty over there who did her bit, she understood that bit, but other people didn't actually know what Betty did. And Betty didn't know what other people did. So you need your own little bit in isolation, but not the whole picture. And one of the benefits of data flows, if you do it properly, is that you build that whole picture of what's happening to the data. Step three, then, once you've got the data, you know what's happening to it, you know what steps it's going through, who has access to it, and why. It's good to have role-based access permissions. It's good to define access controls. It's good to have multi-factor authentication to be able to access the data. But have you got that in all the places? And what's the legal basis for processing the data? And does that legal basis change as it moves through the whole data flow from infant data over here, from when it starts, to end of life data over here when you're finally storing it and archiving it? And then step four is what happens to the data? What do you do with it? Is it being used for marketing? Is it being used for HR? Is it with your legal department? Is it being used for service delivery? Is it being used for operations? Who's using it? Might be a mixture of those, but who's using it? And is that data kept as it is? Is it kept as virgin data? Or is it shared, or is it transformed? And if it's shared with other people, particularly if it's shared with external organizations, do you have a data processing agreement in place with that organization? And what does that agreement actually say? Has anyone ever actually read it? One of my jobs, one of the things I do for my clients is review these data processing agreements, and some are great, some are fantastic. And I see that Joe's also on the call now, and Joe will, I'm sure, agree with me when we come to Q&A that data processing agreements range from the sublime to the ridiculous. Some of them are really, really good. A lot of them are not. And the ones that are not tend to be where someone grabbed someone else's data processing agreement off the internet and just changed it for their own purposes, but then they didn't realize that the rest of it then did not make sense. And then once you've got all this, as I say, the final step is where's the data stored or archived? Is it stored in the cloud? Is it on-premise? Is it geographic locations? And how long do you keep it? How do you back it up? How do you make sure that you've got it? If you do the backups, where do you store the backups? Are the backups in the cloud? Are the backups on-premise? Do you take backups off-premise? If you take them off-premise, how do you know where they are? And how do you keep track of them? So all these sort of things about where the data is stored or archived. So let's talk about some common pitfalls to data mapping. First is incomplete records of processing. And I'd come across this all too often where someone has started off with really great intentions. We're going to create our article surgery register. We're going to create our ROPA. We're going to do all this. We're going to have the diagrams. We're going to map it, and it's going to be fantastic. And then, oh, it's taken us 2 weeks already and we can't afford to spend any more time on it. But hey, we've got it where it is, so that's better than nothing, isn't it? Well, do you know what? Often actually incomplete is probably worse than nothing. Um, because it can give a false sense of security that you think you know what's happening to the data and where it's flowing, and in fact you don't. And rather like the chap in the picture here, you just end up in a sense of total overwhelm. Shadow IT and untracked apps. This is becoming another biggie now, particularly with the rise, and it is a rise, with the genie's out of the bottle with AI. Because people are creating things in AI that maybe they're uploading information into ChatGPT or into Claude or into whatever the next flavor of the month AI engine is. And they're not actually thinking about mapping where that goes and why, and can they even do it? Do they have permission to do it? What things are they, you might think that all your team aren't using AI. You might have a blanket rule in your company. We don't use AI. I bet in the majority of cases, if someone like myself came in and dug deep enough, we find that your members of the team are using AI. They're just rather not saying that they are. And that can be worse than actually being open about it. Untracked apps. People love now installing apps on their phone or on their laptop or on their tablet. Do you have a policy for those? Do you keep track of those? Do you know what data they're processing? Do you know where that data actually goes? Most cases, the answer to that question is no. So again, it's something you really need to think about, and it's difficult. It's one of the arguments against the whole principle of BYOD, or bring your own devices. Because if you issue a company tablet or a company laptop, to some degree, and you can't do it 100%, but to some degree, you can lock that down and you can know what's on it. But if it's a bring your own device, how do you tell Fred, who bought his own iPad, he spent hundreds of pounds on it, he brings it into work, he uses it for work, but then his son or his daughter or grandson or granddaughter or even Fred himself installed some dodgy game on it that actually is hooking up some of that data and exporting it abroad somewhere. And that happens. It is a real risk. Unclear data ownership, again, is where people have data that no one knows they do. Because they use it to do their job. No one actually knows, though. What about James, who organised a golf tournament last year, and he's kept a record of what people drank at the reception afterwards and how much it cost and all of that. Does anyone know who's got it? No, probably not. It's sitting on his laptop. Does it matter? Maybe not, but maybe it does. And you don't know if it matters or not until you know whether it exists and you can think about it. And then the final one here is lack of regular review, because what lots of people do, they'll judiciously create their Article 30 register. They'll create their ROPA. Brilliant. Brilliant. We've got it. It's there. We've mapped it. We know where all our data goes. Fantastic. Now it's 2 years later. Can we, hand on heart, and I normally say to people when I'm training them in person here, imagine you've got to put your hand on your heart and you've got to say, yes, I'm confident that our Article 30 register is up to date. And in other words, your honour onto the end. If you had to give that under oath in a court of law, how confident are you that it's true? But I suggest in most places, A, you ain't that confident, and B, it may well not be true. But just things do change. So it's very important that your Article 30 register, your register of processing activities, is a living document. It shouldn't be a document that you create and then you put on the shelf and it just sits there gathering dust. It should be something that is a live document. So we talked about pitfalls. What about best practices then? As I said, maintain a living data inventory. Make sure that it's a living document. Collaborate across your teams. I personally always recommend using visual tools for clarity. I find a diagram really does, a picture speaks 1,000 words, is the old saying. Can be a case in terms of data mapping that a picture speaks 1,000,000 words. Makes it much easier for people to follow. And keep it simple, but keep it thorough. So, you don't need to dive down into the nth degree of knowing precisely what happens to every single field, of every single record, of everything you've ever gathered in data since the year dot. Because that's nirvana. That's the ideal space. But let's be realistic. You're not going to get there, probably. But do make sure you know, particularly customer data, employee data, all the normal field, all the normal lots of data that fall under GDPR, that you know what happens to them. So I mentioned right at the start that I had some recommended tools, and as I say, I'm a big, my favorite word in tools and my favorite word in software is free. None of us like paying for software unless we have to. Sometimes we have to, of course. But my recommended tools, and they're all either free or low price, so that even SMEs can, even if you're a one-man band, you can make use of these. One I use a lot is draw.io or diagrams.net. It's free. It integrates with Google Drive, and I like it. It's nice and simple to use. Another one is Lucid Chart. That's a freemium. It's free, but it has inbuilt ads and there's things. It prompts you for purchases within the product. But again, it's easy. One that's great for whiteboarding, and you may well come across it, is a product called Miro. One that's been going since, it feels like since Adam was a boy, to be honest. I can certainly remember using Visio. I want to say 20 years ago. It may not be quite that long, but it was certainly way back in the days when Windows was, Windows, I think it was Windows 3.1 or certainly Windows XP where Visio first appeared. It's now been swallowed up by Microsoft. It's available via MS365. And there's also one called Whimsical. And Whimsical is, I'm not personally used Whimsical a lot, but I've heard good reviews about it. And it does have a free tier again where you can create diagrams for free. So how can we help you? How can we help you get your ducks in a row? We can facilitate data discovery workshops. We do have some pre-built templates that work with those tools that I've just mentioned. We can help you with ongoing support and data flow reviews. A number of our clients get us in once a year to look at their data flows and just make sure that they're still up to date. And that can be a relatively short process. It can be a process that's all over in half an hour if everything is up to date, or it can be a process that takes several days if there's lots of changes. And we can also create visual dashboards that just make it easier for stakeholders to view those data flows. So, next steps. If you haven't done Article 30 registers or APA registers at all, haven't done data mapping at all, my big advice always is start small. Pick one business unit, get those flows done first. Get those that you know that you like them, you're sure it's right. Don't pick something complicated. Don't say, I'm going to pick one business unit, and that business unit I'm going to pick is HR as a whole. It's too big. You won't do it. You're losing enthusiasm. Within 3 days, you'll be putting on the shelf and saying, bugger that, I can't, I'm not going to do that. Don't pick that. Pick something simple. One I normally say to people, if you're a reasonable sized organisation, pick employee onboarding, pick if you've got a new member of staff who's just starting. What data did you collect from them? Where does it go? How do you process it? What do you do with it? Get that one right. Give yourself a pat on the back. Give yourself a reward because you've got that first one right. And then you've got a good template to use as you work on the other processes through your organisation. But it does take time. Are you going to, if you're a reasonable size organisation, are you going to start today and have all your data mapped tomorrow? Nah. It's not going to happen. It's a process that can take weeks or even months. But that doesn't mean months and months of constant work, by the way. It probably is only a couple of days work, but it takes time over time because you have to do these investigatory bits to find out what the data actually is, who's holding it, where it goes, so on. Review the access rights quarterly. Someone who's got access to data today may not need it in 3 months' time. And if they don't need access to it in 3 months' time, then revoke that access. Don't just leave it there thinking, oh, well, we gave them that access. They did that project. We may as well just let them carry on having access to it, mightn't we? It's not a good idea. Keep the access as tight as you can. And if you need support with that, you need help with that, well, then, of course, let's talk. Love to have a chat with anyone who wants help with that. So that ends this morning's presentation, bang on half an hour, so I'm really quite pleased with that. I'll put my contact details there. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and so that we can all see each other. And if anyone's got any points or any questions, then it'd be great to have them. Joe, great to see you here this morning. How's things?
Sorry, I was late. I'm having a few technical issues with my Wi-Fi at the moment, and it just doesn't log on for some reason, but I'll fix that. Really good presentation. It's so important, and it is, you and I both know, it's mandatory, but it even if it's not mandatory, it's the foundation of all your data protection activities, because if you don't know what data you've got, where it is, what you're doing with it, how can you respond to a subject access request? How can you respond to a breach? You might not even appreciate you've got a breach if you don't know the data is there, and I frequently do sort of the ROPA, the data audit in a spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be an expensive. There are, as you would know, Keith, a lot of very expensive tools out there. But for the majority of us who are small businesses, finding £400, £500, £600 a month is just not, realistic. So a good old fashioned spreadsheet or those tools that you suggested is great. And I sort of talk to clients and I say that it's not something you'll do today and you'll never touch again. And we're all busy, we're all small businesses. So what I recommend to people is that, we might do a quarterly review of our business. Have we done the sales we wanted? Are our costs going up or down? Those, reviews that we do of our business, add in an extra 35, 40 minutes to that review process and say, what else has changed in my business? Have I suddenly stopped using Google Sheets and I'm now using Excel? Okay, do I need to update my ROPA? And if you do it in a little drippy bit like that, it's no longer then this massive task that you're going to have to do, and just incorporate it into your business.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with what you're saying there, Joe, because
Yeah.
it is. I mean, somebody said to me yesterday, actually, I was talking to them about what we were doing today, and they said, how on earth do you start? I said, well, like eating an elephant one bite at a time. Yeah, and it is a case of just picking something simple to start with, and you might think, that's such a simple process, why do I need to document it? But once you've done that, then you're like, hey, I can do this. but yeah, I've got a FTSE 100 company who are a client of ours, where their open is a living document. But practically every week that somebody's making a change to it. Um, One of the things I've had to do with them is to get them into the idea of actually version management, so that we know we don't just know what it is today, but what was it 6 months ago? Because
Yeah,
if we have as you say, if we have a data subject access request 6 months ago, were we then storing that data even in a spreadsheet on XYZ machine rather than in the cloud where it is today? Because, hey, if we're trying to satisfy that access request and we think it's now in the cloud and we go to the cloud and we can't find anything, we go back and say, we haven't done anything. And in
yeah.
fact, we have, because that's not where we stored it at the time. And I think that is, yeah, that is just so important. But it's the I can't I don't know about yourself, but I can't help feeling it as well that A, it doesn't help that it has various different names, and B, it sounds complicated. If you say to somebody,
Yeah.
can I look at your register of processing activities? That sounds like, oh,
I think, I don't know, excuse me, I think that some of the different names come from people like us, Keith, who try to simplify it for small
mm,
businesses, because if you look at the actual regulation, it's the record of processing activities. Now, what exactly does that mean? So we translate it to simplify it, and we call it a data map, a data flow, a data inventory, a data audit. But all of these things are essentially the same
mm,
tool, aren't they? They
yeah,
are just a record of what data you collect, where you collect it, how you collect it, what you use it for, who you share it with, what systems it in, where does it go? In terms of, is it stored in the UK, the US, India, Ukraine, wherever, right? And that's all it is. It's a fundamental record of the data types and all of those things. So it can be in so many ways, it can be very muddy, but it really doesn't need to be muddy.
yeah. No, I agree, and also I've found that a side benefit that lots of clients gain is suddenly they realize that they've got business software that they're paying for that they don't actually use, and they haven't used that
Oh
data
yeah,
in there for years, and therefore it's like, well, why are you still paying a
yeah,
monthly subscription for
yeah,
it then?
yeah,
And um,
yeah. I
that
did. I'll give you an example. I did a sort of a training session with somebody last week on what is the data audit, the ROPO, and why they needed it. And it was somebody quite new to business, really setting up well. And she messaged me in the week. She said, you know what? I've got 3 different spreadsheet tools that I've been using. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move them all into my Microsoft 365 because I'm paying, she said, and I've worked out I'm going to save about £30 a month. Now, £30 a month doesn't sound a great deal of money, does it? Right? It's 30 quid. What is it? That you can't even maybe get a meal somewhere for that, perhaps. Um, but if you add that up over a year, right, and then you think that I might have two drawing systems, I might be paying for Miro and Visio, I might be, and then when you pull all of these things into your map, you can save money. And in the same way that when you look at where the data is going and how it's flowing, let's say, from your CRM to this, you may realize that you've got 2 pieces of software that you thought were individual, but are actually doing, give or take, the same job. And where you identify where you can compromise, that could be another 30 quid a month.
mm,
And then suddenly you add this up, and that's £100 a month that
Yeah.
you are saving on your software. So there are so many benefits from doing the record and processing
Oh,
activity.
absolutely. And I mean, I went through and actually did that with my own business
Yeah,
6 months ago, and found there was probably 400 quid a year I was spending on things I wasn't using anymore.
yeah,
And you know, again, it's 400 quid. You sort of think, well, okay, it's not a big, yeah, it's not going to make or break, but I'd rather spend that £400 on something for me or something to improve the business rather than going to software that I'm just not using.
yeah,
It's you know, it is it's and I think once you sort of start explaining it that way, and you almost say to people, look, you know, if it cost me a day to come in and do it, you'll probably it's probably only out costing you nothing because you know I'll find the savings that pays for
yeah.
that of my time, which is you know and I think the other thing which is in fact I'm going to do a piece on it probably for our newsletter next week, but is the case that the ICO issued a press release for yesterday of this law firm in it got fined £60,000
Oh, yes,
so
yeah,
solely for being late in reporting a data breach. Um, and you know, again, part of me says I would, yeah, I'm not a betting man, but I would bet money that if I went into that business prior to them getting the penalty, I mean, hopefully they've sorted it out now, and said, can I look at your Article 30 registered post activity? They don't. We haven't got one. Um, and that's you know how things happen.
yeah. No, yeah, I just that does it. It didn't surprise me at all. With the legal firm, you know, at all.
And also, of course, you know, I mean, I was talking about this to a journalist yesterday, um, and I said, you know, also, of course, yeah, in a sense, it couldn't have been a worse sector. Yeah, what is that going to do to that legal firm's reputation?
Yeah.
You know, hey, you're such a good firm of lawyers, you don't even keep your own legal records in order. Is not a good place, not a good place to be.
No, it isn't. It isn't. Yeah.
And and you know, but equally, um, and I'm sure others like yourself actually was silently applauding because at last the ICOs actually find a small business.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
were they a small business or were they one of the bigger firms?
no, they're quite small. I think they're only
Oh, right.
about well, I mean, relatively small. I think they're about 100 lawyers or something like that. But you know, they weren't
Yeah.
a big, huge.
And the thing is, what's even worse is that that's a legal firm.
Yeah.
People are paying them advice for managing GDPR. And I mean, I've had a recent experience with a legal firm that um, undertook a data, created a data breach because they didn't check publicly available data
Mm.
on companies' house database, and they've created a significant data breach as a result.
Yeah. It is, you know,
Sloppy. It is sloppy, but they could have sorted that out by just being more proactive around managing the data and understanding it. But it is such an important tool, and I see the roper as a tool for small businesses.
yeah.
So and I'm sure that you see it in exactly the same way. I know we've kind of talked about these things before, and I know that there was a piece of legislation floated where they were going to get rid of the roper.
Mm.
And somebody said to me, "Oh, well, I don't worry about it. I won't need it when the new legislation comes in." And I said, "Well, they clearly don't understand because they are not
No, no.
professionals in the area. And even I would still, even if the regulation removes it, I would still recommend it to clients
Mm.
because I think it gives you so much in your business, and the value of it is hugely
Absolutely.
important.
And I think as well, you know, it helps you understand how your business works.
Yeah,
You know, because I say the number of times that I've sat with people doing it, and you say, well, that data goes there. Well, what do they do with it? We don't know. You know, and it's like, well, shouldn't you know? You know, you're passing them personal information. Have you got a data processing agreement with them? Well, we've got a contract. No, have you got a data processing agreement with them? And suddenly from there, it snowballs, and it's yeah, it is a real issue. I mean, I'm conscious that you're there listening. Do you have any questions or anything you'd like to add to? No. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Um, as always, thanks, Joe. Great to see you. Great to see you here. And Dorcas, and yeah, Dorcas, can you stop the recording, please?